Okay, hello everybody. Sorry for this slight delay here. Let me make sure the captions are being shown and the chat room is on. Okay. Oh, look, okay. All right. Well, good to see everybody. We had a few technical difficulties. People who thought they were going to be on Facebook are now tuning in here. So we'll have a nice crowd. So, welcome to the Journal-isms Roundtable. We want to start on time. My name is Richard Prince, and I write an online column called Journal-isms. That's journal-isms.com, which is on diversity issues in the news business. This roundtable is an extension of that. We started the roundtable in 1999 when a friend of ours was leaving to pursue a doctorate. She said, keep these going, and we have. We met every month in various restaurants in Washington, D.C. until the COVID pandemic. When we switched to Zoom, our participation then multiplied, and we hope to have more roundtables that are hybrid, that is meeting in person as well as having people attend via Zoom. We've had 4 of those so far. We think of this as an online dinner party with the purpose to network and to learn. Some of the networking takes place in the chat room, so please feel free to make use of it. A special welcome to those who will be watching later on YouTube. Please leave messages in the comments section if you want to reach us, even if you're on Facebook, and I've asked those people to transfer themselves to Zoom. All the comments are on the record, and we ask everyone to be respectful of other people's time. So please try to be succinct and to the point. Now, first I have an announcement about our next roundtable, which is something special. We're going to be in Chicago at the same time as the NABJ convention. It's going to be on August the 1st, and we're sharing this endeavor with the Global Affairs Task Force, Global Journalism Task Force of the National Association of Black Journalists, and will be hosted there by Chicago Public Media, which is WBEZ and the Chicago Sun-Times. Our topic is going to be press freedom in Black-run countries. The whole issue of authoritarianism that we're discussing in the United States is actually a global phenomenon. And so we'll talk about how it's affecting countries in Africa and in the Caribbean. And we've got a nice lineup that we'll share later on. So without further ado, the first thing we want to do is have some remembrances of one of our number who passed last week. That's MB OBrien, who was a president of the National Association of Black Journalists and a longtime member of the staff of the Courier Journal in Louisville. And he touched many people, and many of them are on the call tonight. So Betty Baye could not be here tonight. She discovered she had a conflict. So Michael Days, who also worked in Louisville, and since moved on to Philadelphia, where he was on the masthead there, is going to substitute for her. And is Keith Runyon here? I don't see him just yet. He was the editorial page editor before retiring from the Courier Journal, and is a good friend of Merv's. So Michael, I do see you. I see your name. I don't see you, but
well, I see me.
Oh, I see you. Yeah. Okay. Well, maybe that's another Michael.
Yeah.
All right. Well, in any case, I do see you. You're right. There's another Michael whose name is Paul. I see. In any case, for those who don't know why we should stop and talk about Merv for a moment, please tell us why knowing about MB OBrien is important.
You know, I'm going to be happy to jump in there. I'm seeing my brother Leon Carter here on the call, and he wasn't in Louisville as long as I was there, but he popped in, and that was a period. When did I go to Louisville? That would have been 1980. And I'd been working at the Democrat and Chronicle in Rochester, New York. I met Merv at a gathering of, can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Okay, I met Merv at a gathering at Northwestern University. I think I actually met him at the NABJ convention, but nobody seems to remember who was at that very festive convention. But I met him at Northwestern University, and it was a gathering of graduate students, so people who had graduated from Missouri, Northwestern, Columbia, I think, some graduate school in California. And to nerve Merv, was to love him. So we connected then. I went back to working in Rochester, where I'd been, as you know, Richard, you'd worked there as well. Had been a police reporter, and I covered features and just had a really good connection with Mervyn and Michelle Marriott, who I think a lot of folks on the call know as well. And they very quickly, I went down to interview, and they very quickly said, this is a good place for you. I can't say that I'd really given much thought to working in Louisville, or even had ever been to Kentucky. But Merv had that. If anybody, I think everybody on this call who knew Merv knew how effervescent he was in terms of the cell, and the people there were just wonderful. So I joined that paper, I think in April 1980. When was Derby? It must have been May 1980, because it was right after the Derby. And I have to be honest with you, I spent most of my weekends with Merv, hanging out, talking about the business, talking about journalism, hanging also with Michelle Marriott, who's also gone on to home to be with the Lord. And I've been thinking a lot about this the last week or so, because nobody really talked about diversity, inclusion in those kinds of terms in those days. But there were a number of organizations, including the Courier Journal, which really seemed to be committed to making some inroads. And Mervyn was a champion of making sure that newsrooms began to be diverse. And it wasn't just in Louisville, it was around me. If you went to NABJ in the 80s, and there weren't a ton of us at those meetings in the 80s, where Merv was always a champion of connecting with folks and working with folks and helping folks get placed at different publications. And he was just really a terrific guy, good journalist. One of the things I will go to my grave being very proud of is he, Michelle Marriott, and I worked for months on a series of stories, a package of stories called "Being Black in Louisville," which was kind of at the time. The paper decided to run it for 7 days during the Derby week, which is not what one does in Louisville during the Derby. So it was not a particularly positive thing about Louisville. But what one of the big takeaways was that to have influence, to be Black and have influence in Louisville, was to have influence with a number of white people, really prominent white people, and that had never really been said at that point. This was probably 81, 82.
Well, Michael, one of the things that was said in Michelle Marriott's tribute to Merv in the NABJ tribute to their presidents, called "Committed to the Cause," was that he expanded NABJ to reach out to white journalists as allies, and that was one of the things that really distinguished his tenure. Now, I also see that Wayne Dawkins. Can you hear me, Wayne?
Oh, Wayne, I see Wayne.
I can hear you now. I did some fancy tricks to get connected. Hi, everyone.
Good. Okay. Well, Wayne just wrote a piece about Merv for the Black Alumni Network of Columbia University, and also posted it on LinkedIn. So let me ask Wayne, why should Merv be remembered, and what can we learn from Merv?
As Michael Days is saying, Merv was the great connector. So 1981 was my first convention, and he was the vice president. And what was extraordinary about having that convention in Louisville, that was the first time young NABJ ventured out to a mid-sized city and a mid-sized southern city. With the exception of Houston, which was the founding conference with all of like 60 to 80 people, NABJ stayed in either Washington, Baltimore, or Chicago in those first years. They canceled a convention in Kansas City because the leaders at that time didn't want to venture out of the Beltway area or the Atlantic coast. So to even get the conference somewhere else, and that taught a lot of us so much, because I'm a native New Yorker. So finally I was shedding this New York chauvinism that whatever that there's that famous New Yorker cartoon, there's the island of Manhattan, and there's everybody else, but we're New York, so we're all that. Well, I quickly was disabused of myself. I learned from that experience as a 20-something-year-old that there were people around the country doing great journalism at great regional newspapers like the Courier Journal, which I dressed down in my early years at Hampton. I dressed down a smug PhD who was saying, well, we should all get PhDs and everything. And I said, you know what? We're going to learn how to be good citizens of this campus, but you know absolutely nothing about us, because you don't know that the Courier Journal and 3 other papers like it is the finishing school to the New York Times and the Washington Post and the Wall Street Journal. You know nothing about NPR and PBS. So you need to recognize, okay, because we know some things. But I got to thank Merv Oberspin and others for that. So he was a great connector. He was a great teacher. And I was fortunate to be one of those young journalists who, when we became board members and officers like Michael and many other on this call, the first thing Merv said to us was, check our egos at the door. We're here to do some serious work. And in just less than a year, we grew the organization. We tripled the organization in 1 year. Okay. So I can talk endlessly about that, but I'm going to stop there.
Okay. All right. We have time for one more person to answer that question about why we should remember Merv and learn from him.
Leon's here.
Okay, Leon, go ahead.
In 1981.
First say who you are first.
Leon Carter, editor-at-large at The Athletic. My first job out of school was in 1981, and it was in Louisville. And I never forget that series that Michael Days spoke about, that being Black in Louisville. And I remember walking into the newsroom and seeing Mike Days, Michelle Marriott, and Uncle Merv. And then, of course, on the copy desk was Angela Dodson. And being a young person out of school and seeing Black folks who were making things happen in the newsroom made me feel very good. And I remember talking to Merv, and he said, well, you're coming to NABJ. Now, I didn't know NABJ from ABCD at that time. And I had just joined. So, and that was in June, and I think NABJ was in July or early August. How could I go and tell the sports editor, I need 3 or 4 days off? I didn't feel that was right. So I said that to Merv, and I think I said that to Michelle Marriott. And then one day I saw Merv talking to the sports editor. And next thing I knew, the sports editor came over to me and said I had 4 days off. That's who Merv was. He made you feel welcome in the newsroom, but he also made you understand what it is to be Black in a newsroom and the role that you played. Because I was the only African-American on the sports desk, and I think I was the first African-American on the sports desk. And over the years, as I moved on to ESPN and other places, I stayed in contact with Merv. And the last time that I talked to him on the phone was the day that they had the funeral in Louisville for Muhammad Ali. And I'm sitting in my office, and there's Merv on the TV talking about Muhammad Ali and what he meant to Louisville. And I immediately sent a text to one of our ESPN people, and I said, tell Merv I said hello. And between commercial breaks, next thing I knew, my cell phone rang and Merv was on the phone. And that's just the person he was. He made sure he stayed in contact with people. So why is Merv important? Why we should remember him? Because he was Uncle Merv.
Right. By the way, that's such a great view behind you. Where are you?
This is my place in Connecticut. Is just in short, I created this. This is the window to my right. And I created my jazz room in the middle of the virus when we all had to work remotely. And these figurines came from a shop in Harlem.
Okay, go ahead on.
Richard, I know we need to, but I mean, I just want to follow what Leon was saying. If Merv was really a bridge for NABJ, Merv exposed all of journalism, of the journalism world, to NABJ. It had been kind of a fraternity, sorority kind of thing. And I think Merv was the beginning of the country saying, you need to be part of this. You need to come to this. You need to experience what your people who work in your newsrooms are feeling and experiencing. And I'm thinking back on, I think that was really the beginning of the growth. I think it's Leon, the growth of NABJ. There's a lot to be said for warmth, and we could say, one might say that we had some members in the beginning who, were could be a little haughty, but that was not Merv. Merv would say, hey, how are you doing? Come on, let's go have a drink. Let's get something to eat. He made you feel welcome, and people felt welcome when they came to NABJ. And most of us, the old heads were in their 30s in those days. Most of us were in our 20s and trying to figure out who we were. We were still having these ridiculous conversations. You be black and be a journalist fairly quickly, but Mervyn was really an amazing bridge for us to grow and be a force.
Okay, thank you, Michael. I do last comment. We didn't talk about his international connections, and I see John Ewart is here. Tell us a little bit about those, if you can, John.
Well, thanks, Richard, and I don't want to belabor the point, and certainly adding to what everyone has said about Uncle Merv. But one area that I don't think actually got enough attention is the work that he's done internationally, not only on behalf of NABJ, but on behalf of the United Nations. He was one of the first people to, certainly not the first, but one of the first to take NABJ members to Africa, and working with Jibril. He's taken dozens. I'm sorry?
Jibril Diallo, who works for
Jibril.
Yeah, go ahead.
Right, exactly. Used to be with the UN. Yeah. And I was fortunate to have taken a few of those trips to the continent with Merv and Jibril and many of our members. And a lot of places that you went, Merv was even more of an ambassador than many of the others on the trip. Among the most memorable was being with Uncle Merv when we met Nelson Mandela at his home in South Africa. And it was really interesting when we got back on the bus. Merv was the one who was leading the group in crying about the visit, because it was so emotional, and the fact that the president at the time had given us over an hour of his time on his stopping to see us on his way to Cape Town. So Merv, he would be remembered not just for what he's done domestically for NABJ and others, but he also had a really big foot, if you will, in the diaspora, and for that, many of us will forever be grateful.
Hear, hear. Thank you, John. John worked in Politico, and he's had his own international connections with press freedom organizations internationally. He'll be with us, by the way, at our press freedom in Black-run countries panel on August the 1st. All right, so now thank you all for that. We want to move on, and we want to toast the first editor of the Washington Post who have come to our roundtable, within a month of his being appointed to the job. And so that's Matt Murray, and we're glad to have him, and we want to wish him and the Post well. So let's raise a glass to the success Matt Murray's tenure at the Washington Post. Hear, hear.
Here's to you guys. Thank you, Richard. It's actually, I hate to tell you this, it's not a month. It's the beginning of my 5th week today, but it's close as I could get.
Okay, all right, it's close enough. All right, well, we congratulate you. What are you looking forward to in your time in that job?
Well, thank you for inviting me first, let me say, and it's good to see some familiar faces here and some people I know and have worked with over the years, including Kimberly Johnson from the Journals here and Jackie Jones, I know, and it's nice to see some Post bylines too. You know, there's a lot. The Post is in a good position in lots of ways, and I'm excited to be there and be learning the Post. And as you probably have read, we have a project underway to sort of think about how to foster what we've called, for want of a better term, the third newsroom, which is a way to think about innovation and new audiences and going off platform and finding new ways to bring the Post to different kinds of readers and groups. I think when we really get that up and running, which is going to take some effort, it'll be quite exciting because the theory of the case is that there's a huge audience for the Post journalism, or huge audience that are may not, you know, because of youth or habits, may never subscribe to the Post, but should be getting Post journalism. So I think that when we really get that going, there's going to be an opportunity to reach a wide array of people who otherwise wouldn't come and find the Post, while also, I hope, strengthening the Post itself as an institution and the growth and reach of the core product and on subscribers and people who should be getting the Post. So complicated. We started talking about how to structure it, and I'll have some news soon on people who are going to lead that effort internally and how we're going to move forward on that. But I think despite the bumps that you've undoubtedly read about and some of the immediate circumstances of the last month that have made news, I think we're starting out on an exciting path of reinvention. I truly believe that, or I wouldn't be here at even though it is my hometown paper. So I'm really delighted to be here.
Okay, let's talk. Let me just ask you about those bumps and media
Sure.
coverage.
Sure.
How do you react to this drip of pieces every day or two about what's going on with the leadership of the Post? How does that affect you and your job?
Well, look, it's hard. It's hard for the newsroom. The newsroom, you know, hates, even though the newsroom is writing some stories, you know, it's a hard situation for the newsroom when things feel uncertain. And these days in media, as I think we all know, people are happy to, your competitors are happy to beat up on different ways. And there's both serious questions and there's also a lot of sort of speculative stuff. Look, you know, I think that the only way you can generally proceed the best you can for most people in most cases is shake it off. Don't read the stories about yourself too closely and keep going and keep your eye on the long ball. You know, because ultimately the Post is a huge and important institution that means a lot to a lot of people and does a lot of important work for the country and for its readers. And everybody in the newsroom and probably all the people on this call believes it can and should be bigger and in a better position and doing, you know, we've talked about the financial situation. So everybody is rooting for the Post to get there. And so the best thing you can do is try to look past the immediate moment or day and keep your eye on that ball. That's a bit of a challenge, but keeping the newsroom's head in the game is important. And, you know, my mantra on that is always that nothing helps like news. So writing stories and doing journalism is why we didn't get into this profession really to make money. We got into it to have fun doing journalism. And so just trying to keep everybody in the game there is really, you know, my approach.
Okay. We have time for just a couple of questions. Who's got a question for Matt? No one. Wow, that's great.
Can I ask a question, Rich, if you don't mind?
Yes.
If you can tell us what's wrong with the Post?
What's wrong with the Post?
Wow.
Well, again, I see some distinguished bylines at the Post who worked there for a long time, so it's rather arrogant for me to show up after a month and give my thoughts on what's wrong. So I say it with humility. I'm still in listening mode. I would say, look, I think that, first of all, I would say this. I do, and I really mean this. This sounds like PR. There's a lot right with the Post, and that doesn't get out. The range of the journalism, the high quality of the journalism, and the number of things the Post covers is really remarkable when you go under the hood and look at it. Almost in some ways too much. And I don't think the Post gets enough credit for that, because we do live in a soundbite, quick hit world where one image or impression takes over and dominates everything. So I think that we shouldn't underestimate how much is right with the Post. I would say in general, and I don't want to say anything that's critical of predecessors or others before me, because as we all know, running a news organization is hard. People fantasize about how easy it was in the old days, but it's tough. I think that the world is moving so quickly, readers' habits are moving so quickly, keeping up with that has been a challenge. And the Post, to some extent, arguably with its ownership right now, wasn't so incentivized to have to keep up with it. So I see a lot of opportunity to improve the use of data and metrics, improve how we measure ourselves, improve the fact that we are in the business of serving, not writing stories per se, but serving readers with journalism. And how do we do that? And how do we connect with those readers? I also have a sense, without sounding like a typical news guy, that there's work to be done on the commercial side to bring some expertise and product talent and things in-house that the Post hasn't really had, and get ourselves on the front foot. I mean, ultimately, these are questions of culture and structure, and they're kind of boring questions that way. But I think being built for this world in a certain sense is what the Post has to do. And I had some success in the Journal when I was the deputy editor, sort of recalibrating the Journal for growth and for the growth that they've had since. And so I see the opportunity for the Post to get that deep down. The trick is doing it without ruining all that's working and that's good at the Post, which is a lot.
All right. We have three people who raise their hands, and those will be the three. We have Barbara Reynolds, Terry Shaw, and Dana Priest. So Barbara Reynolds.
Dana Priest is famously known as a very soft reporter with no tough questions. So I'm glad.
Thank you. Thank you. But if you've answered this question, just ignore me because I'm late. But I was just wondering about how much of artificial intelligence is responsible for so much of the changing the culture and the number of people at the Post. And do you see, the AI and ChatGPT and Gemini, they can write stories, and I'm always told they can write stories faster than I can or we can. Yeah. So can you tell me what is some of the people leaving? Is that because of AI, and how is AI influencing the journalism at the Post?
So I don't think any of the people leaving is because of AI per se. That they obviously had some big buyouts and departures. I think that was sheer economics, and the message from the ownership then that he wanted the Post to be at least breaking even, and if not profitable. I think so that really preceded this. There's a lot of talk about AI, and we're starting tentatively to figure out how to use it, but it's not very deep yet. I think one of the hopes is to think about how we could use AI intelligently as a tool to serve readers, because it's coming whether we like it or not. And lots and lots and lots of bad actors out there are beginning to deploy AI and will use AI to generate content and create websites that compete with existing news sources anyway. So we should try to get out in front of that. But the goal at the Post, and my personal view, is you use it as a tool to help people. It can help in certain kinds of things like aggregating. As AI gets better, we're all going to be using it and seeing it embedded. But it's a tool in service of the reader, and the fundamental essence of the journalism and the distinguishing feature of a place like the Post or another news organization in the age of technology is that the humans do it, not computers. So we have to draw the lines of what's a good use of AI, maybe even define some industry best practices. But it's not about writing stories. It's not about doing reporting. I've seen a lot of the AI tools that are coming into being, and they actually concern me in the sense that they not cultivate bad habits in human beings. The best journalism, the essence of journalism, the things AI is not going to do are always going to be getting scoops, doing intelligent analysis, synthesizing information, and making sure a human being is giving you that information. And I don't think we want journalism from a place like the Post where AI is trying to do any of that stuff. Hi, Falana Patterson. So I think that there's a lot of hopes for what it could do, but we're going to proceed carefully and try to use high standards to be out in front of that. That's how I see it now. But it's still pretty. We are going to have a new thing that you'll see next week that we're going to put out there. That's a climate bot, and the idea is you type in your climate questions, and using AI, it gives you an answer. The answer comes from all works that our journalists have done. So it's all taken from their work. So hopefully people like the service, but I'll tell you, it ain't perfect. It's got some flaws. We're going to have to experiment and find how these things work. But that's okay, because my view is we're all going to get used to using these things in our lives, whether we like it or not. And we can't put our heads in the sand. We actually have to use it intelligently. So that's how I hope we use it.
And are you ready for AI to play a role in the election? Like they did play a role in the last one. Are you prepared? And what kind of things are you prepared for?
It's a good question. You know what? I haven't read as deeply in on this as I should with the election team. I've talked a little bit about that, but I think it is going to be potentially very scary on this election and more going forward. And so I haven't asked the question, but you remind me that I should. What are we going to do if, fake phone calls are going out a few days before the election that claim to be Barack Obama saying, "I hate Joe Biden" or whatever? Post has been traditionally, I think, strong on misinformation and disinformation reporting and going after these kinds of things. But as we prepare, it's definitely, we had an election meeting and definitely talked about it, but I could probably read further into it because it is going to be a threat.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
Terry Shaw.
Hello, Mr. Murray. Thank you for coming. My name's Terry Shaw. I'm a former editor on the foreign desk of the Post many years ago. Could you, and I'm going to have to leave pretty soon, but I wanted to ask you this. Could you give us a few more details about what the third newsroom is going to cover? You mentioned the climate bot. Maybe that's in there.
Yeah.
Puzzles, recipes. What is going to be in the third newsroom?
I think the third newsroom, we're starting to work on the structure of it. I think that the goal is to have a place where we can assemble content that often goes off platform or has the opportunity to go off platform. Think about innovation, new products, ways to lean into changes out there in the world. And I'll give you an example of what I mean that might help make it more concrete. And that's probably a culture thing. It's probably about getting those forces aligned and together and thoughtful about the world. It's partly about doing more social media, video, and other kinds of things that are going to reach these young people who should be getting Washington Post journalism, but are probably never going to subscribe or come to our website. If we get some of them there, that's great. But the ways people are consuming content and the places they're consuming it are just different today. And to the AI point, there's an enormous amount of garbage out there, and there's going to be more garbage out there. So, the publisher has said that part of our mission is to think about how to get high quality post journalism more in front of those folks and get it out there in the world where they are, hopefully win some readers, but also just set a mark for high quality content, maybe make a little money while we're doing it. So think innovation, think off platform, think strategic initiatives, think probably service journalism content, social media content. And it's not going to be walled off. We'll have things that concentrate, and we'll bring it. Also, we'll bring in the rest of the newsroom where appropriate. My example that I've used for the Post newsroom is if we all think about when the New York Times started its podcast, The Daily, and then took off. And then all the other newsrooms were like, where's our daily? Why shouldn't we do that? And the Wall Street Journal, when I was there, we started a podcast. It's not that the Times was genius, it's that they put themselves in a position to get lucky culturally. And then they started the podcast, and then they hit that wave as it took off. And soon they had a new product that got 3 million listeners a day who in most cases aren't subscribed to the New York Times, but they've made a business out of that in a real way. The Post could be thinking more along those kinds of lines without in any way diluting the core product. So we're going to announce a steering committee next week that's going to be delineating some of these questions, but that's the function as we see it, as a concentrated focus on these new opportunities and off platform particularly.
All right, Dana Priest.
Hi, Matt.
Hi, Dana.
I'm so sorry that my camera's not on. I can't figure it out. But I have a comment and a question. I guess my comment is every day I compare the New York Times and the Washington Post, and on the simplest level, it seems apparent that the Times just gives readers access on the homepage to so much more content than the Post does. You know, I have a hard time finding everything that's in the Post because there's so much now, but it's often hidden in the sections. So I'm really hoping that someone does a deep look at how easy it is for people that come to the Post to find all the content that we have. My question is, how can Will Lewis, we're all rooting for you. We are all rooting for the Post, but how can he survive and bring the newsroom with him, given all the serious accusations that have been made in serious publications about his credibility, his interest, his investments? It's so alien to the Post to have someone with investments that are going to directly overlap with Post interests. So just, yeah, how is Bezos involved yet? Are other people involved in, you know, Sally or others asking, how is this going to work out given the seriousness of the stories about him?
Well, Dana, thanks for saving a very soft question for the end. I really appreciate that quite a bit. You were living up to your reputation very much here. Look, and people are saying, good question. So I'm gonna let me talk about your comment, and I'll talk about Will. Well, on the homepage, I just want to say I couldn't agree more. I think that the Post, again, I don't want to be critical of other people, and so I've said some things around there, but I think there's a widespread feeling at the Post that organizing and presenting the content that we do, which sounds like an easy function, isn't, and it's a challenge. The Post is not very well set up to lead into good habit. I agree with you 100% that one of my frustrations coming into the Post is realizing how much good stuff there is that doesn't get surfaced very well. And doesn't get found very well or gets published at odd times. I do have a large observation that I've made to everybody, which is I think maybe other newsrooms have made more progress than the Post has at connecting the output and the data and the platform with the journalism. And everybody at a modern news organization is in the business of producing a product for readers, not just in the business of producing stories, if you know what I mean. In the old days, it was easy to produce stories because you didn't have to worry about the print paper because it was very fixed and set, and somebody decided who went in the print paper. But the dynamism of making a product that people are going to read in the digital age 24/7 is a challenging one. I think we have some work to do to get that right. That's something I'm trying to crack. Again, the Post does not get enough credit for the volume of high quality work that I think we do, and doesn't hone in on audiences enough. On Will, I'm going to half or three-quarters punt probably. You know, obviously we've done some of our stories too. It's really a decision of the owner and ultimately, you know, who he has in that job. And my job is to work with the publisher and the CEO the best I can. I've known Will for a long time. You know, I worked with him at the Wall Street Journal, and I can tell you from my experience working with him there, I never had any questions of his ethical conduct in any way at the Wall Street Journal. He never even came close to attempting to interfere in any way with anything we did on the news report. And he laid in place the business plan that helped the Journal turn around from a pretty low point and set the stage for today's continued success at the Journal. So I had a positive experience with him, which is part of what got me to come to the Post, candidly. I think reporting is going to continue. I think he's going, I mean, I haven't talked to him in depth about this, so I don't want to speak for him, but I think, any leader, including me, ultimately, you might have a leadership position and title, but you've got to have the team with you for your credibility long term. I think he knows that, and he's working in that direction. And I think, I hope he does it, and I'd like to see him survive for the sake of the Post. But I certainly recognize there are many people who have these questions, and there's going to continue to be reporting. And I wish I had a better answer than to say I don't think it's all played out yet, but that's where we are. So my job goes back to originally kind of what I think Richard said in the first place. And I don't want to belabor this, but I'm at a point in my career where I love being in newsrooms, and I came back to a newsroom because I like being around journalists. I like doing it, and it's fun for me. So my view is I'm going to worry about the things I can worry about and try not to worry about the things I can't worry about. And that means keeping my head in the game, keeping the newsroom's head in the game, protecting the newsroom from any hint or concern of interference. And there has been none, I can say, in the month that I've been there. And just, frankly, pardon my French, kicking ass on stories. And the more we can do that, beyond everything else, we're serving the Post, we're serving the readers, we're serving the owner. And that is something I think I can have some control over. But I certainly what you're expressing, I think is there's a lot of concern about it out there. And I certainly get that. I think that the company gets that as well. So
thank you.
Here, here. Okay, that was last question is for me, and that is, what do you see as the future of and status of diversity, equity, and inclusion in the Post newsroom now and during your tenure as editor?
Well, let me say a couple of things that I've observed early on. It's first of all, I should say the elephant in the room that everybody is politely not raising is there was concern about the process by which I was picked, and the editor who originally had accepted the job as other editor and then pulled out about how we were picked. And I think it was not transparent to folks, and there was concern about that. And so that question was put on the table by that, which I certainly see as a challenge and something the newsroom takes very seriously. Look, I think that one of my observations coming into the Washington Post now is that as a starting point, there are not enough women and people of color in leadership positions. There's a good pipeline. There's a lot of deputies. There's people coming up, but I hope in a restructuring we can create some more opportunities for leadership roles. I've gone into meetings and seen, again, deputies and number twos. I think also, and there's a couple people on this call who could tell you some things we did in the past at when I was at the Wall Street Journal. The Post has more work to do on the whole process of people's careers. Meaning career pathing, helping with career development, helping with career training. A lot of news organizations these days are doing a pretty good job on the recruiting end, and then they can have a couple of people of color and at very top jobs, but in the middle of the newsroom career, for various reasons, they lose people. They don't keep them engaged. They don't keep them inspired. We have to do a better job of career pathing and helping people develop. I'm slightly surprised to find that jobs at the Post are not always posted transparently. Everybody gets a chance to apply. One of the rules we put in place at the Wall Street Journal was every job was transparent, every job was open, and every hiring manager in every situation had to consider women and people of color in a job. That didn't always mean that they had to hire, but we needed a justification for why. We wanted to make sure the pipeline was strong. So there's some basic practices that way that the Post needs to more fully embrace. I don't say that with any criticism of the recruiting team, by the way. I think the Post has been on its own journey, like a lot of these organizations have on this front, and has made real progress. I just think it needs to take further steps to move along here. I have some hopes as the third newsroom develops. And it's just a hope at this point. I don't have concrete plans, but I have some hopes that we can, among the new products and ways of reaching people that we can find, is we can really find ways to go into new audiences and more diverse audiences with samples of the Post and really reach out there in ways that we don't do very well now. I can tell you that the belief, I think, of the owner and management of the Washington Post is that we can reach many millions more people with products and clever ways of getting out there. So I'm hopeful that also we can find ways in the third newsroom to broaden the range and voices in our content quite a bit and take that further than it's gone now, and then reach new audiences out there. That is going to probably depend on me and my ability to hire intelligently and bring in people with new ideas and new voices to get there. So the onus is on me, but those are a few ways I'm thinking about it at this point, Richard.
Thank you. Thank you. Let me just say this, and that is that we have on the call here some people who are involved in the Atlanta Journal and Constitution's project, the film they made called The South Got Something to Say, which is about hip hop in Atlanta and the growth of it and everything. You know, when I mentioned that to somebody else on this call, they said, "Oh yeah, the Post should do one about go-go," which is a DC product. But I'll also mention that our local Howard University station, WHUT, did do pieces on go-go and other local institutions, and the Post didn't run a word about any of them.
Oh,
and I just wanted to bring that to your attention, that that sometimes the thrust to become international and national, as many people have complained, means neglect of what's going on locally.
I can see that. I would certainly welcome thoughts from anyone on the call to send me some of your thoughts on that, if privately and candidly, and think about how to do that. I think the Post has long wrestled in different ways, long before I came along, with it, to be national, to be international, to be local, how to balance those things. And of course, they are coming off some buyouts that have affected some of the staffing in some of these areas. But I guess, well, I'd like to hear more about that, but I guess I would say, as a reader and someone who grew up in DC, I definitely don't feel that there's a deep enough ownership and diving into sort of the rich, long, deep culture of Washington in all kinds of ways, Washington and surrounding areas. And there's certainly opportunity for us to do that there. I think thinking about what the Post is and who it speaks to and how it gets there is one of the jobs that's been hanging over there for a long time.
Here, here. Listen, Matt, I really want to thank you, and I'm sure the rest of the people on the call want to as well. We wish you the best, and we look forward to you being able to implement some of these wonderful plans and thoughts that you have. So thanks once again. I'll toast you one more time.
Hey, please send me emails. I'd welcome them, and it's easy to come on calls and say things. So hold me accountable for things down the road as well is important. We'll probably never get everything done that we need to, but we can certainly make things better. And I hope that you feel that we do over time. So, and I know that people really care. One thing I've learned, and then I'll shut up. There's a lot of people who love the Wall Street Journal, where I was for almost 30 years in a certain way, but people really have strong feelings about the Washington Post and love it. And it's really important. And it's exciting for me to be at a place that's part of a community in a different way than the Wall Street Journal. And it's very important for me to understand and help honor the community and what we do. So that's sort of a privilege I've got here and a responsibility that's different than what I had before. And I'm excited to be part of that. And I hope that we live up to it and move the place forward. So thank you very much.
Can I say something quickly about that to Matt Murray?
Yes.
I will always appreciate when we brought our students, our Morgan students, to the Journal, when you just kind of calmly just said, well, you know, with the Wall Street Journal, you get 2 newspapers. And I kind of chuckled. I understand that because I voraciously, well, look, I subscribe to both papers. And when I would walk around the campus with one of those newspapers under my arm, I was looked at as a weirdo. You mean you read these things called newspapers? I mean, my dean is on this call. I mean, even my department chair, he is, he understands what I'm doing, but he even finds it curious.
Okay. All right, Wayne.
But I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Wayne.
moving right along, as they say. We want to toast another former postee, Gary Lee, who is with us, now managing editor at the Oklahoma Eagle, and he's about to be celebrated by the National Association of Black Journalists as a journalist of distinction. And while at the Post, he was on the travel desk, and he visited many. I'll mute myself. Okay, many foreign countries. Oh, wait a minute. I think I'm getting an echo. Anyway, I'll stop talking, and let's raise a glass to Gary Lee upon his impending honor from NABJ. Here. Gary, tell us something.
Thank you, Richard. Let me, I'm going to be short, but I will say a few words of gratitude, first of all, to you for this toast and for creating and expanding and inspiring this community of journalists of color and allies to learn together and celebrate. This is an important institution in American journalism. I do also want to say thanks. So the Oklahoma Eagle is a weekly newspaper in the Black Wall Street community of Tulsa, Oklahoma, my hometown. And, years, when I look back on the years of being a national correspondent at Time Magazine, a foreign correspondent at the Washington Post, and covering national news for the Post, I didn't imagine that my career and my path would take me to telling and inspiring others to tell the stories of people of color and underserved people in Tulsa. And I, even though I had not imagined it, I feel it's exactly where I want to be at this time. And I'm honored to be in this particular space. Just a couple of other words of thanks. First of all, to NABJ for this honor. And I love NABJ and what it's done. I can remember when I first joined the Post going to an NAB convention in Baltimore. This is in the last century. And I've been proud to be part of the organization over the years. I did really, I think what's kind of most important for this particular distinction is the attention that it brings to two things. One is to the Black press, which is its own animal, its own creation, and plays a really significant role in American journalism. And I'm happy to be part of that as managing editor of the Eagle. And also to the importance of local news, which is absorbing, it's interesting, it's vital. And I know that there are others on this call who are also committed to that. And so I just want to raise up those two institutions, the Black press and local news in general. And finally, just this, and that is, I look around the table here and I see lots of allies, friends, colleagues, mentors, mentees, and I'm really inspired by how we brought each other along over the years. And I'm looking forward to continuing that journey. So that's all I've got to say right now, Richard. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Gary. And we'll see you in Chicago. All right, another alum on the call is Shirley Carswell. Where's Shirley? I saw you earlier. Shirley, I was in the room. Oh, good. I was in the room at NABJ in Birmingham when Shirley was at this workshop on Black men in journalism, and she mentioned the fact that she had been disappointed in it seemed like the decline in numbers of Black men going into journalism, and so she was going to start in conjunction with NYU, my alma mater, a workshop the following summer on mentoring and tutoring young Black men who wanted to be young Black college students who wanted to be journalists. And she did that, and it took place earlier this month. And I'd like Shirley to just give us a brief synopsis of what took place and what's next.
Great, thank you, Richard. You know, it's funny, Gary Lee on the call is an alum of the Dow Jones News Fund, which is the organization that I'm now the executive director of. So we're very proud of Gary. But also, it just ties in with what Matt Murray was just talking about in terms of DEI, right? So this actually started, this initiative actually started on one of these journalism calls, Richard, this roundtable, when Jason Samuels, who's a professor at NYU, I came on the call to talk about being appointed as executive director of the Dow Jones News Fund. And I said, you know, increasing the number of Black men was one of my goals. And Jason immediately sent me a message in the chat saying, I've been thinking about that too. I'd like to work with you on that. We started a conversation that was 3 years ago. And I'm so happy that in June, we saw it come to fruition. The partnership between NYU and the Dow Jones News Fund hosted a 1-week workshop for 20 young Black men from all around the country. We selected these 20 from a rather small application pool. I hope we see more applicants in the next go round. But we selected these 20 young men. Half of them are from HBCUs. And some of them, many of them actually, are interested in sports journalism, which was one of the things we mentioned in that workshop last year, that, you know, there are Black men in journalism, but a lot of them are interested in sports, not necessarily news. And so this workshop was an attempt to help them secure a foothold, basically, in the industry. We had you know, one of the things, Richard, can I share my screen? I just want to show a couple pictures while I talk.
Jackie Green is here to help you on that.
Let's see if it works. If it doesn't,
I know how to do it. Good.
You can do that.
Okay, good.
Let's see. Can you guys see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to keep talking, but I just wanted to show the pictures because the thing that really struck everybody in this, who was involved in this workshop, is just the visual of seeing 20 young Black men around a table at the New York Times, you know, conference room, just struck everybody. So these young men got to, you know, we brought them into New York, all expenses paid. We gave them tours of several major newsrooms, including the New York Times, CNN, the Wall Street Journal, CBS, and they, you know, it just struck me how everybody who saw this group of young men was just so struck by it, because you don't see that many young Black men in newsrooms. And I think the pros who spoke to them were just, it just really did something for all of us.
By the way, that's Lacey there.
Mark Lacey, the manager of the New York Times, is one of our board members of the Black Male Journalism Workshop. He hosted us. We had a great time at the Times. We went to
Tremaine Lee.
That's Tremaine Lee, who came and spoke to the group on a panel. This is Mark Thompson, the CEO of CNN, who came and spent 45 minutes with them. Took pictures with them. Marcus Mabry hosted us at CNN. And so you can just see from this is one of my favorite pictures. I mean, it's just like, when have you ever seen that many Black people, period, but especially Black men in a newsroom around the conference table? And so, we had a really good week. One of the things that really was key was the exposure for these young men. For a couple of them, it was their first time in New York City. And so most of them had never been in these newsrooms, and we gave them training. They got to write stories. They found stories in New York and wrote them in a week. And you know, it was just a really heartwarming start to this program. So what's next? We want to get some more applications. Probably after Labor Day, we'll start the application process for next year. We're looking for money, of course. We need sponsors. And we'd like to, the guys all said, it'd be great if we could stay longer than 6 or 7 days. And we'd like to eventually turn this into an internship program as well as the training. So it was a great start. We look forward to doing much more with it. And we hope that some of these young men one day will be working at the Washington Post for Matt Murray. So thank you for having us.
Okay, Shirley, so what's the takeaway? What's the lesson for everyone else who's on the call and those who are watching? What do you want them to know about this?
I think the takeaway is that, you know, we've got to do more to help young men come into the industry. And as Matt mentioned, you know, there is this point, we get them in, we can't keep them. And so I think one of the takeaways is more career counseling, more training, more ways to help them succeed and to show them that there is a path and there is a place for them in the news industry.
Here. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Shirley, and best of luck to you and to Jason, to the students.
Thanks.
All right, now to our main event here, which is the podcast that they worked more than 2 years on, 3-part podcast called 40 Acres and a Lie. And Matt DiRienzo is here, who is editor of the Center for Public Integrity while all this work was done. So I'd like, where Matt? I see you someplace. Matt, I'd like you to take over. Oh, there you are. Take over the segment. Tell us what all this is about, what you've accomplished, and what we should know about all this.
So I'll be really brief and zoom out a little bit and punt that to April and Alexia, because I just got out of the way. Their work is really this is their project. But this goes back, this project, I don't know that I've ever said this before, but like, I think if you added up the amount of staff time and resources and salaries between us and Reveal, well over $1 million probably went into this project over 2.5 years to produce this. And really you have to go back about 5 years to see how it happened. And that started with Susan Smith Richardson, who took over as CEO of the Center for Public Integrity then, and focused the mission on confronting inequality in the United States. So it took this legacy white-dominated organization, one of the original nonprofit investigative outlets in the country. I think the only older one was Reveal, which is our partner, Center for Investigative Reporting. She took it and focused on inequality and laid the groundwork for Chicago Reporter-style work to happen on this national stage with this organization. And the organization went from 1/3 people of color to 2/3 people of color. We put a focus on historical context in the work, data and documents, narrative storytelling, reporting with and in service to communities, focusing on systems instead of investigative reporting that just is looking to catch the bad guy. We were looking at systems that were designed to be discriminatory, right? Or were based on not disrupting the past wrongs. And also collaborated with genealogists, historians, academics, which I think you'll hear Alexia and April talk about. And so I would encourage you to read their text work, the podcast, and then there's an interactive tool too that they can tell you about. And then also I just say, if this interests you, take a look at the portfolio of work that came from that vision that Susan had over the past 4 years, including the Heist podcast seasons 2 and 3, which focused on the racial wealth gap and Black banking, and then April's brilliant work this past fall on Black farming. So that's my piece of it, Richard. I think it really is, Alexia.
Okay, we're gonna hit the others. Let me just make sure we all know the premise of the whole piece, which is that we all have heard about 40 acres and a mule that Black people were promised after the Civil War. But what this series is about is how yes, some were promised 40 acres and a mule, and some actually got some of that, but it was taken back. And so they went and, well, I'll let the rest of the team explain. Alexia, you're next. You're on. Tell us more.
Thank you so much for inviting us to be here. April and I have been talking so much about this project, and I don't think we can get tired of talking about it. So one of the things that I want to acknowledge is that even though a lot of people didn't know this particular history, that it was a program that was carried out, there are Reconstruction era historians who have known this, a small group that have been writing about this. And what we brought was the stories. We found names. We learned how to do genealogical research, and we wanted to tell the stories of people who got the land, and had it taken away. So to us, that was kind of what we were adding to it. And these records, like the Freedmen's Bureau records, have been really hard to access. Even if you live here in Washington, D.C., they're really hard to read. You need to know what to ask for, because there are more than 1 million documents, and the National Archives is not going to let you loose through the National Archives to look through the Freedmen's Bureau records. So it's been really difficult, and there have been so many efforts to get these documents online, and that's how we were able to find these names and tell these stories. And it was really difficult, but definitely a labor of love for me and April and Pratik and the whole team that was working on it.
Okay, April, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, so we had, I should say first, it's really great to see you and be here. And I see a lot of familiar faces from when I lived
April
in
was
DC.
part of the roundtable when we were doing our in-person in restaurants. And so it's good to see her again. That's when she lived in DC.
Yeah, thank you for having us. I'll just add that our colleague Pratik, who couldn't be here, created this incredible tool for searching the Freedmen's Bureau documents. So he, as Alexia said, it's really difficult to look through those documents. And he created a tool using artificial intelligence that scans 1.8 million records. And so it uses image recognition technology to look through those records that have not yet been transcribed. And then for the 500,000 or so, I think, that have been transcribed, you can search by keywords like the name of the person or the location, and some other items.
Okay. All right. I wonder, how does this, knowing this, how does it affect your approach to reporting and what you think the rest of us should know about this period of time, and how it how it fits into the way we look at the world today? I'll tell you one reason I ask. Joy Reid has written a nice book about Medgar Evers and Murley, and she talked on her show about that, and she mentioned that the bad actors of that period need to be remembered as well, instead of not just the heroes, because the descendants and the fellow travelers, colleagues of those bad actors, are around today doing the same thing, and they don't get enough attention. So I wonder what it is about this attempt during Reconstruction to keep Black people down, basically, after promising them 40 acres and a mule. How does that affect the way you look at the situation today in 2024?
Well, I mean, it just, as journalists, we're so conditioned to just focus on what's happening right now, what's happening today with the news. And sometimes it's just we don't have time to think about the connection of why something is happening now, and that it could actually be something that is 150 years old, is based on a policy or a decision made by the federal government 150 years ago. And I think this is an example of not only how history is shaping the news today, in this case, the Black and white wealth gap, or just the racial wealth gap in general, and what is causing it, and how it started, way back, in more than 100 years ago. But also just that to me, the biggest thing is oh my God, there's so many stories that haven't been told. We were just focusing on the, Sherman Special Field Orders. That's just 2 field offices of the Freedmen's Bureau. There are 1.8 million records, and we just we're focusing like very narrowly on the 40 acres and a mule program. There are so many records in the Freedmen's Bureau archives that we don't even know what we don't know is in there about stories that haven't been told yet, because historians, like so many people, have just had trouble accessing these records, and now they're being transcribed for the first time by volunteers. So to me, it's just kind of this learning that there's just so much that we don't even know about our own history, and telling that history and telling it accurately, especially at a time when, you know, politicians are trying to reshape like our history or like censor it or whitewash it to us. To me, that was like one of the most like eye-opening parts of this whole project.
Here, here. Okay. Does anyone have any questions for the team from 40 Acres and a Lie?
I do.
Okay, who's that? I can't.
Roger.
Who's talking? Oh, Roger. Okay, where are you? Oh, there you are. Okay, great. Go ahead.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for your work. I am curious to know if in your research you found any distinctions for Black soldiers who'd mustered out. How were they treated afterwards by the Freedmen's Bureau, if at all?
April, you want to answer that? I know they definitely were among the first to find out about 40 acres.
Yeah, they were among the first to find out. A number of the people on our lists were people in the military. I know, I mean, in South Carolina, the person that I focused on was a Navy man who was like at the top of the list of one of these Edisto Island logs of folks who got land, I think in part because he learned about it early and was able to get there first. But in terms of how folks were treated, I don't know if you know more, Alexia.
Reminds me of how, yeah, like you said, there are a lot of the people who got 40 acres because they were the first to hear about it were people who were freedmen who were serving in the Union Army. But we also realize that there's all these, the National Archives also has their pension applications for their widows, like their widows who are filing applications for pension. And there is just so much information in these like pension applications that, and you can see like when you're talking about how they were treated, you can see that many of them, like their widows, are saying, look, I haven't remarried, I don't have anyone to support me, I'm too old to keep working, and the work or whatever work I do is not supporting me. And like just the amount of interviews that they had to give these pension examiners to get their $7 a month. I feel like if that's a topic that interests you, I highly recommend the military pension records. Those haven't been scanned. Most of them are not online, as we can tell. We scanned a lot of them, but only of the people who got 40 acres because that's what we were focusing on. But the National Archives has those pension records are such a wealth of information about specific stories. If that's an area that interests you, I highly recommend that.
Well, my great-grandfather was in the Pennsylvania Cavalry and mustered out at Appomattox. And the Klan in 1876 went around killing former Black soldiers, Black businessmen, Black educators, and 6 of them gunned him down in 1876. And his sons then killed 15 Klansmen before leaving town.
Wow.
In revenge. But they had he wanted building a forge, and he was the blacksmith, using the money that he saved up as his salary in the cavalry from 1856 until the end of the war. But he got no help from the federal government. That's why I was curious. There was no GI Bill for soldiers, and I wondered if there was anything that you had come across that was targeting former slaves who fought in the Civil War.
Yeah, I did not see, I saw that, I'm just thinking of like one specific person I wrote about, and I was looking through his pension. He was trying to get a pension for disability for serving in the Union Army. He said that I can't remember exactly what his injury was, and it was rejected. I bet you that was common. I don't know if there was some other kind of program for veterans, but we did not see any, unfortunately, which is, very sad to say, but that doesn't mean that we've, looked through everything.
Thank you.
All right. Anybody else? Okay. Hearing no more questions.
Hey, Richard, I'd like to make a comment.
Yes. Who's speaking? I can't see.
That's Ken Cooper.
Oh, Ken, where are you? You're not on my screen. Okay. All right. Go right ahead, Ken.
I want to, first of all, compliment the team, Alexia and April and the others for doing this. Because at this stage of history, I think, doing in-depth stories to connect what happened in slavery and during Jim Crow to the racial wealth gap and the inequities of this today should be at the top of the list of a lot of journalists. Given the conversation about reparations and some people's refusal to see any connection between what happened way back when and the way things are now. And I also want to compliment the team for working their way through those Freedmen Bureau records, and at the National Archive, I'm embarked on a historical project, part genealogical, and where I've done some of that myself. And even when you find the record, the right record, I know it's difficult to parse sometimes what the handwriting says or what the phraseology means. So my hat's off to the team. Excellent work. And let us have more from others around the country.
You're here. Okay. Okay. Anybody else? Otherwise, then we'll go to our introduction.
Just a quick comment, Richard. This is Jesse Lewis.
Oh, yeah.
Just a Saturday week ago, I attended at the Martin Luther King Library a talk by Rodney Brooks, who wrote the book, The Freedmen Savings Bank. And he describes many of the things that were just discussed here, minutes ago. It was just terrible. I mean, they just stole money from veterans using this Freedmen Savings Bank as just one of the ways. So just a second, and it's a topic that really arrested my interest, and it's also very topical.
Here, here. Also, there's the other book about $15, and I think Ebony Reed and her co-author have a similar book about the Black wealth gap. Okay, anybody else?
Yes, Richard, I have a question. This is Hazel.
Yes.
Trisedney, and maybe I missed it, but I'm trying to catch hold to what now is going to come of this information, or what impact had you hoped to have, and can something be done about it? Or it's sort of like the forgive the cliche, but where do we go from here with this information?
Well, we've been doing trainings like office hours with other newsrooms, especially those in some of these, Florida, Georgia, South Carolina areas. So folks can do their own research, reporters can do their own research and decide what stories they want to do. We've also shared information about descendants that we were not able to reach out to. And we've also shared information about descendants who are not in those 3 states, but have anywhere across the country. So publications nationally can tell their stories. We've suggested story ideas to people who are interested. We're available to help. We hope that people will continue the work that, after us, and that it does influence more conversations around reparations now.
Here, here. All right, Cynthia Robbins has her hand up.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. This is extraordinary work, and I join with all the others who are commending the team. And I was particularly intrigued to hear about your AI tool that was developed, and to understand how people could possibly access that. Thank you for your work.
Okay, anybody you want to comment? Anybody from the team want to comment on that?
Sure. Thank you. I know our colleague Pratik, he kind of downplays what he did, because basically the technology is facial recognition. It's like the same technology as facial recognition, but he used it in such an innovative way, basically trained it on the Freedmen's Bureau records, and said, I showed him, look, here's a land title that I found. We need to, I found many, and we found hundreds of names, so we wanted to find more. So he basically wrote an algorithm that said, look for other documents that look like this land title and this register of land, people who received land titles. And he used that. It was basically just like facial recognition, and he surfaced all these other names that we hadn't found. So I think it's amazing. And we know that the Smithsonian is really excited about what he did. I dropped a link in the chat I think it's called Friedman Search. It's just, it looks like a Google search, but if you do, you can search by keyword through the transcribed records, but you can also, if you find a document that you're interested in, let's say it's a marriage record or something, you can say there's an option to see similar images or look for similar documents, and that's the technology that he added to it.
Okay, thanks. All right, let's go now to our introductions. This will give us a chance to hear from people who haven't said anything and who want to talk about, who want to comment on anything they've heard tonight. Let's start with Jackie Green, who's our producer. Jackie, introduce yourself and tell us if there's any observations you want to make.
Good evening. This has been a fantastic program tonight, and I'd like to say thank you to all the participants. And thank you for all of those who helped remember Merv. I remember Merv quite fondly, and that was my first trip to Louisville to see Merv. So I do have very fond memories of him. And thank Matt for coming at such time to have a engaging conversation with us about what's going on at the Washington Post. It looks exciting, and I think we have to ask him to come back a little bit later to follow up to see if this stuff really is happening there. That will be great, and I really appreciate all of his effort in taking this much time to spend with us. He's still on the link here, and Shirley and your experience with the Black Men's Project, which is incredible there. And also the team that came on with the 40 acres. That's exciting, and even to hear about the technology that's being used and how we might use AI differently. I think I might actually go out into the archives and do a project now hearing that. So I'm really excited about the program. I thank you all for being with us, and I'll pass it on to the next person.
Okay, Marcy DeVoe.
Hi.
Please introduce yourself and tell us if you have any observation to make.
Well, excuse me, I can't put my video on. I just had some surgery today, but I come to the roundtable every opportunity I can get, and it just blows me away every time. I live and work in Hollywood, but the people who the stars for me are all of you, all of the journalists who have known and worked with around NABJ. This is what keeps the fire going. So thank you all. Great to see you.
Okay, thank you. Lynn Adrian.
Hi, Lynn Adrian. I'm on the board for journalisms. I'm formerly with the Newhouse School at Syracuse, running the DC graduate program in broadcast and digital journalism. And previous to that, I was with ABC News for a long time. Great panel, so many different topics that are so pertinent. I love the conversation about the value of AI, because AI is made to be, is presented as a boogeyman so many times. And we really need to embrace the fact that this is going to help elevate journalism and the topics that we're talking about. So the young men who are sitting around that table being exposed to the different news, the leading news outlets, need to know that if they know AI and how to use it, that's going to elevate their prospects in terms of getting hired different places. And if we're starting to talk about the Post as they're figuring out what their next is and how they are profitable, who's going to be there, who's not going to be there, what kind of employees are going to be there, and what's going to satiate Jeff Bezos in terms of profitability. AI and technology, all of that is a part of it. So I think the whole thing is linked. I'm glad that we had that conversation.
All right, thank you, Lynn. Doreen Bethea.
Good evening. It's good to be here tonight. I haven't been in a few meetings, but I'm glad to be here tonight. I am a multi-platform editor at the Washington Post, journalism educator who recently taught at Howard University, along with Rutgers and the Missouri School of Journalism. I am steadily keeping my head down and doing the work at the Post, and looking forward to how we're going to turn things around. And congratulations to the 40 Acres team. April, it's good to see you on here.
Here, here, okay. Darren Snyder.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Darren Snyder. I'm a freelance columnist, journalist, longtime Gannett employee. Currently write a lot for thegrio.com as well as other organizations. Thoroughly enjoyed the Journal-isms Roundtable as usual. Thank you, Richard. Thank you to all the guests.
All right. Carmen Fields.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for the tribute to Merv. My first experience on the board of NABJ as Region 1 Director, Merv was the president, so I love the man and I so appreciate the tribute and the many memories that it brought back. Thank you for the tribute to Gary Lee and the Oklahoma Eagle. That's where I got my start as a print journalist more years ago than I care to mention. I'm currently an author, and special congratulations to the Friedman's team, because in doing my research for the biography on my father, the big band leader, Ernie Fields, Ancestry.com only goes back so far and is useful, but it's not as all encompassing. But for those of us interested in genealogy and going further, this is a welcome learning. And again, a positive use of AI. It's so glad to hear that, because I've been frightened by it all along. Keep up the work you're doing, Richard. Thank you.
Is that your dad on that book cover behind you?
Certainly is. Ernie Fields, going back to T-Town, the Ernie Fields Territory Big Band. Thank you.
Certainly. Okay. All right. Anthony Wilson.
Well, thank you, Richard. I do appreciate the opportunity, as always, to participate at the roundtable. And I'm particularly grateful to hear what's going on at the Post, because coincidentally, as we talk about AI, they ran an excellent story today about the proliferation of these bizarre, what can I call them? I think there was a term they used for it. It's the equivalent of visual spam. You've seen these images that claim to be triplets and quadruplets, and isn't this wonderful? These people are so old and look so beautiful. That apparently is some aberration based on AI. And I, like Carmen, am interested in hearing more about the positive side of AI as opposed to this kind of stuff, which keeps polluting our feeds. But back to the Washington Post, my point, they explained it in a great way, and hopefully people will understand what it really is and is not if they got a chance to read the Post. Of course, everybody has not subscribed to the Post either, but my point is, thanks for giving us the opportunity to talk to the Post leadership, and also to hear about Merv, and also to hear about all the things we talked about this evening. It's been great.
Well, tell us about you now. How do you identify yourself?
Oh, okay. Well, I am a weekend morning anchor and morning reporter at the ABC-owned station in the Raleigh-Durham television market. And I'm also one of the lead instructor at NABJ's multimedia short course at North Carolina A&T. And I also work with the student project, which is going to cover the convention next month in Chicago. So all those fingers in all those different pies, I try to stay busy and try to help bring up the next generation of folks who are going to replace us eventually.
Here. All right, Phil Haslanger. I see you, Phil.
After unmute myself,
Yeah.
Thanks, Richard. This is the first time I've had a chance to be at one of these. It's really been informative.
Well, first identify yourself, and then you can
yeah.
tell
So I'm allegedly a retired journalist. I'm on a couple of advisory boards, because when you retire, you get to give advice. So at the University of Wisconsin in Madison, we have the Center for Journalism Ethics, and a couple of my fellow board members, Jill Geisler was with us earlier, Chuck Stokes is here. So we're well represented. I'm also on the advisory board for the Religion News Service. So I get to hang out with a bunch of journalists, which is a great group. Now I have another new group of journalists to hang out with. So this is very cool. And this was a fascinating evening. I was so impressed by the work that Shirley's doing with the Black Male Journalist Project. I think there's so much potential in that. It's really neat to hear about that. And 40 Acres and a Lie, I did not know about that, and now I have more things to look for. So
excellent. Thank you very much, Phil, for being here. Yannick Rice-Lamb.
Hi, everyone. I'm Yannick Rice-Lamb. I teach journalism at Howard University. I'm a journalist and a medical sociologist. I'm also co-founder of fierceforblackwomen.com. I'm working on a book called In My Backyard, How Pollution and Climate Change Are Making Black America Sick to Death, and recently contributed to Angela Dotson's book, We Refuse to Be Silent. Thanks for this program, Richard. I appreciate the tribute to Merv and to Gary. Congratulations to the team for 40 Acres and a Mule. It's great to see everyone again there. And also, I hope everything works out at the Washington Post. Good to see Matt too. He was my editor for a 3-part series I did on the Goodyear, the rubber plants in Akron and their impact on health.
All right. All right, Beverly Kirk.
Thank you, Richard. It's great to see everyone. I've missed a few of the recent meetings, and I just want to say, love the 40 Acres and a Lie. Can't wait to see the whole series. And just on the situation with the Washington.
Wait. Identify yourself also, please.
Oh, I am a professor of practice in the Broadcast and Digital Journalism program for Syracuse University, and I direct the Washington programs for Syracuse here in DC. I'm currently on medical leave because I had the unfortunate experience of falling down a flight of concrete steps and got kind of severely injured and I'm recovering from that.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Let's see who's next. Well, Ken Cooper, we heard from you. How about Gwen Mellinger?
Hi, everybody. I'm Gwen Mellinger. I'm a professor at James Madison University here in Virginia. And I have not been at a roundtable for a couple of years, but I am a media historian. And I do work on newsroom diversity and the history of newsroom diversity. So I certainly had heard of Mr. Obispan through that research that I had done, because he was very much involved with the American Society of Newspaper Editors and was an advocate with the diversity committees at ASNE. I'm also working on a book. I have page proofs. It's the title is Racializing Objectivity. And so, and it's about the white press's coverage of the civil rights movement in the South during the 40s and 50s. And it should have a 2024 copyright. And I do use critical race theory in my research, and I am glad that I'm a full professor with tenure and 68 years old, and I don't care. So we'll see.
Thank you, Gwen. All right, Ernie Suggs. Yeah, Ernie, glad you made it.
Good evening, everyone. This is my first meeting, so I'm a longtime NABJer, so this is my first meeting. So I'm happy to be here with a lot of faces and names that I've grown up with, admiring. You know, I may have gray hair, but I'm still the baby of the group. So it's good to see all these faces. As I said, I've been a reporter for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution since 1997, former NABJ vice president. Currently on the Neiman Foundation's board of advisors. And, you know, I've kind of like, you know, I've been a reporter covering race and culture for a long time, but I've kind of over the last couple of years kind of looked at a different trajectory in terms of how I'm going to navigate my career. So in 2022, I released my first book, The Many Lives of Andrew Young, which is a biography of him, Andrew Young. And then if you had asked me a year ago if that was the thing that I'm most proud of as a journalist, I would have said yes. But last November, I released my first documentary, and it was called The South Got Something to Say, as Richard mentioned. And I'm very proud of that work. It's a documentary looking at the evolution of hip hop in the South, focusing on the 1995 Source Awards, in which Andre 3000 famously said the South got something to say, which we argue launched Atlanta in the South as the world capital of hip hop. So that documentary is out now. We've been touring the country with it. We were just in Washington, D.C. a couple of weeks ago. I just got back on a red eye from Los Angeles, where we were at the Dances with Film
Film Festival. And we have some more events coming up in Martha's Vineyard in New York City and everywhere. And we're still, still waiting on an announcement on our streaming deal. So I'm very excited about that. And, I'm just kind of looking at different ways to tell stories. I came into the business, trying to be Wayne and Richard and all you guys, kind of like, that gritty newspaper reporter, which I still am. But I'm also finding out that as journalism is changing, you have to find new ways in which to reinvent yourself. And I've kind of figured out these kind of two different ways to do that while still writing stories and still going to city council meetings and still calling the mayor at 7 o'clock at night to try to get a quote. So it's been a pleasure, and and it's really good. And Richard, hopefully I can join these meetings every month. I really enjoyed it.
Here. All right, we'll go send you an invitation to join the list.
All right.
All right, very good. All right, Jackie Jones.
Greetings, Jackie Jones, Dean of the School of Global Journalism and Communication at Morgan State University. This was a great evening. Merv, I think you can't ever say enough good things about him. He certainly was very helpful to me in a number of ways over the years. And when I wrote my book on career coaching and changing careers, he getting feedback. He was a major contributor to the book. So I always was grateful for that. I think that I was happy to see Gary Lee. I don't know where that feedback's coming from. I don't think that's me. Happy to see Matt. We worked with him when he was at the Wall Street Journal with our business journalism exchange fellowship program, which is still going on at the Journal. Shirley and the Black Male Journalism Project, that's wonderful. 2 of our students were a part of that program this year. I'm really excited about the 40 Acres Project. And it's always good to see people I haven't seen in a long time. And I'm just excited to be here and look forward to the next event.
All right. Thank you, Jackie. Sharon Farmer, our photographer.
Yo, Southeast in the house. What really, if anything, about the Washington Post is that we used to get stories about every ward, every neighborhood. And that's not what's happening now. I'm not saying nobody else is important, but it just says a lot about when people leave their jobs for whatever reason, that there's a huge hole over at the Post. So I'm just going to register that with them again, because I see people, I go, hey, you ain't doing good. So thank y'all for listening to this.
All right, Pam Purify.
Hey there, everyone. I'm Pam Purifoy. I'm co-chair of the NABJ Media Related Task Force. And for those of you that are interested in AI, stay tuned at the convention. We'll have something for you. I enjoyed this so much, Richard. I enjoyed it thoroughly. And the 40 acres and the mule, 40 acres, the mule and the lie, that was outstanding. Enjoyed the whole program. Thanks for inviting me.
All right. Thank you for being here. Chuck Stokes.
Hi, everybody. It's so good seeing so many friends and faces, and some who I haven't seen in quite some time. Of course, Phil, we see each other all the time, and Jill. I'm Chuck Stokes. I'm the editorial and public affairs director at WXYZ TV, which is the ABC affiliate in Detroit. So I'm a longtime broadcaster at the station there. And I also host a weekly news and public affairs show, the longest running one in the state of Michigan. But I just want to compliment Richard and everyone on pulling this together. I have been on this before, but I think the last time I was on was during the pandemic. So everybody was closed in during that time. But this was very informative, and I just urge you to keep doing it, and anything I can do to help, I'm happy to do so. Like Phil said, I'm not quite retired yet, but I'm on a few boards, so I don't know how much more free time I have, but maybe when I finally hit that retirement stage, I can help you out some more. But thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Chuck. Melania Patterson. Falana Patterson.
Hi, thanks. I'm Falana Patterson, and I'm the head of news audio at the Wall Street Journal.
Oh,
And
okay.
I was actually invited because Matt was going to be here, and I stayed because it's such a wonderful program. I learned so much. I'm so curious about the 40 Acres project. I'm going to look it up and check it out as soon as I can. And I know Matt has dropped off, but I did want to say that I was really heartened by the fact that he was invited to this. I was his last appointment to the masthead at the Wall Street Journal, and Matt was very committed to helping advance my career. And the first time I met Matt, he actually came in to try to keep me from saying no to the first offer the Wall Street Journal made to me. And we both realized at the end of that conversation that was not the right role for me. But he said to me, "You need to be at the Wall Street Journal." And eventually I got there, and we made it happen. And I consider him a mentor and a friend and someone who's very important to my career. Kimberly Johnson, who works with me at the Wall Street Journal, I think she's dropped off, but he was also extremely supportive of Kimberly. She led the Pulitzer finalist Tulsa project that I came in and worked on the very tail end on, but they were going strong. And honestly, that project would not have been what it became if it hadn't been for Matt's unwavering support of it. And even I just remember, even at the very end, when some things were looking a little crazy and we didn't have quite the resources we needed, Matt got us the resources we needed to get that project to the finish line. And I have found him to be very open, very generous. I've had some of my best.
What was the project again? I missed that.
The Tulsa project, where we looked at
the
the
Tulsa
race
project.
massacre
Okay,
in Tulsa. Yes. Yeah. And it was a Pulitzer finalist, which we're really proud of. And
right.
But I have found him to be just a wonderful person to just talk about race, class, culture, politics. He's gone, so I feel like I can say these things behind his back, but he's just very open. And I encourage you all to invite him again, and I would love to be invited again.
Oh, well, all right. Dr. Jerry Goodwin. One of the Goodwin family.
I'm sorry, I'm here. Well, my name is Jerry Goodwin, and I'm proud to be here representing Tulsa. And my aunt Carmen Fields, I have been inspired by her in my career. I'm a college professor at Tulsa Community College and have been a professor for 24 years, but I cut my chops on the Oklahoma Eagle, our African-American weekly newspaper here, but it's an honor and a privilege to be invited to be a part of such a distinguished group of individuals this evening.
All right. Thank you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Neil Foote.
Hey, everybody. Sorry I couldn't join you guys earlier, but thank you all for joining in. You all need to give a huge shout out to Mr. Prince, who does this truly out of love of journalism and a love of making sure the story is told. I'm Neil Foote. I'm board chair of the Journal-isms, a 501c3 nonprofit. Go to journal-isms.org, right, Richard? And click on that donate button. Richard is doing this really on prayers and wishes. I'm sorry, that's a commercial. That's my duty as board chair. Thanks for the other board members. For those of you who come back every month, thank you. For those of you for the first time, you have just seen what we do at Journal-isms. We look at the past, we look at the present, and we look at the future. Tonight was a perfect example of that, right, Richard? We looked at the great journalist Merv Augustine, who inspired so many of us, including me early in my career, hanging out in North Carolina when I was at ASNE, and we had a month-long journalism project with high school students, and he and David Haupt hung out there with the students in the dorm rooms. That's the kind of person he was, and so many others like him, looking at what's going on in the Washington Post and certainly looking at the future of AI. So thank you all. Appreciate what you do. Sign up, tell a friend, come on back. We do this in so many special ways. So in addition to Journal-isms, I've been a longtime journalist. Many of my friends are here from Miami Herald, Washington Post, ASNE, Tom Joyner, currently at the University of North Texas, leading our PR marketing and engagement efforts. and our branch campus in Frisco, Texas at the University of North Texas. You all take care and see you again soon. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Neil, Mr. Chairman. Panda Howell.
Penda Howell here. Good evening, everybody. Such a pleasure to be here. And so I have to say that I am shocked by this roundtable. It's my first time here. I reached out to Mr. Prince in the blind about 2 weeks ago because I was a fan of the writing and the journalism. And just to give you a quick background on me, I'm not a journalist. I've always been in the media business, but on the business side. So I served for 18 years at the Amsterdam News as Senior Vice President, Chief Revenue Officer, 3 years at NPR as Chief Revenue Officer, and I decided to start a news and information platform where I'm from, which is New Jersey, centering communities of color and centering voices of Black folks, brown folks, and their allies. And so in my quest to develop and expand this platform that we now have, which is all digital, full service website, weekly newsletters, bi-monthly podcasts, I've been following Mr. Prince's journalism's LinkedIn posts for a minute. And I said, I'm just going to reach out to him. I know he doesn't know me, but I got to meet him because I want to talk to him about potentially doing some stuff with me in New Jersey Urban News. A lot of the things that he discusses are priorities of mine and align with part of our mission. And so not surprisingly, Mr. Prince being the seasoned professional journalist that he is, when I reached out to him to introduce myself, he did some background checking on me because I had friends of mine calling me saying, "Hey, this guy, Mr. Prince, is checking you. He's trying to figure out who the heck you are." And I said, "Okay, that's exactly why I reached out to him." So this is a pleasure to be. This is such a pleasure for me to be here, and thank you. I've learned an awful lot.
All right, thanks for being here. We appreciate it, and we will be in touch. Robin Burgess is here next. Robin.
Oh, hi, Richard. I'm sorry. I'm taken back a little bit because I'm used to listening and watching, but thank you. I want to echo what everyone has said. It's a wonderful thing that you have done with journalisms. I rely on that for my news. I'm in the vein of journalists' existence, public relations, although I try not to be a pest. I did start out many, many years ago in my third grade class at New Lincoln as the editor of our newsletter, but that's the end of my journalistic voyage. So thank you again for letting me participate in this. It's a fabulous forum, and I look forward to the next one.
All right, here. Athalia Knight. You there, Athalia?
Hi, everybody. I just wanted to say hi. I'm Athalia Knight. I was a reporter at the Washington Post for a number of years. And I always enjoy these roundtables, and my congratulations to Richard for yet another stimulating and insightful evening. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I see Mike Oddie from the West Coast. You there, Mike?
Hey, Richard. Hey, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, I did a thing today I shouldn't have done. I hooked up my laptop to my 65-inch TV there, and I don't know what's happening. But anyway, Richard, I just want to give a shout out to you. And journalisms, it's something that I look forward to reading when it hits Facebook or wherever I'm reading it. I did want to mention to the young journalist there about the project she's got going with the young Black men budding journalists. I'd love to get involved with that in some way, some fashion. I don't know. probably shouldn't be volunteering a bunch of other things, but if she can reach out to me, I'd love to get involved in whatever way possible, mentoring or financial or showing up and just talking journalism to those budding journalists. I think they need to see more Black male journalists who have been at this for a while, and I have been. Oh, I should say I'm at the Los Angeles Times. I'm the assistant national / foreign editor at the LA Times, and I've been here now almost 8 years and counting. So yeah, that's it. Shout out, and I love the project also on the 40 acres and a lie. That sounds like a great project, and I'm looking forward to checking it out. That's it.
All right, thank you, Mike. And Mike loves to travel, as he named one of his blogs. And when he returned from being in China and all around Europe, he did grace us with his presence at a roundtable. So glad to see him in this forum again. Let's see, Jesse Lewis, have you said anything yet? Oh, yes, you have. But if you can be brief.
Well, I've said it all. It's always great to be here and connect with a lot of people I never had a chance to meet. It at 87. A lot of, I started enough to post many years ago. So it's nice to see the torch being carried by so many people younger than me.
Okay, and as I've told people, Jesse is responsible for my having gone to the Washington Post, as he recruited me to go down and try out way back in the day. So I don't know what some have asked whether I should be grateful or or not about that. All right, I see David. Now, which David is this? We just see the name. Well, David's not on. His name is there, but he's not on us with us at the moment. Okay, well, that's it. We came in under time, which is wonderful.
I didn't get introduced.
Thank you for all your contributions to the
Richard,
to the chat. We're going to print that out, and everybody who's on the call for whom we
Cynthia Robbins didn't get a chance to be introduced.
will be getting a copy. And I want to remind people, I forgot to mention when I mentioned the Chicago Roundtable, August 1st in Chicago, that if anybody wants to RSVP, and of course, lots of people do, we have a new email account for that. It's called Black Run Countries, all one word, run together, Black Run Countries at gmail.com. Because we will have people there in person who are happy to be in Chicago for the NABJ convention, but it also will be a Zoom, and we'll have people calling in from our panelists calling in from Kenya and Jamaica and Zimbabwe and New York, that foreign place, where Gary Pierre is with his Haitian Times. So there's more information should be on our Journal-isms Roundtable page, which is at journal-isms.com. You'll see the tab that says Journal-isms Roundtable, and you can see more about that there. And I gave you the email address. And so the next time I see you all, many of you will be on August 1st. I hope I'll see a lot of you there in Chicago and on the Zoom.
Richard,
and thanks to all of our guests for a wonderful enriching conversation. And thanks for being here.
Richard.
So we'll see you soon.
Richard.
Hey. All right. Good
Richard.
evening.
Hello.
Richard.
Off. Oh, everybody's off.
No, I'll show you.
Richard, can you hear us?
Some.
I'm
Richard?
here.